never know how to start these videos. I feel so awkward. Happy 2023. I hope January is treating you well so far. We're going to be talking about the 105 books that I read this year, which sounds so crazy whenever I say that out loud. This is definitely the most amount of books I've read in a single year ever. And it's crazy that it happened in 2022, considering 2022 was one of the busiest years for me academic-wise. I took the MCAT in the beginning of the year, which I did really well on. That took a lot of time. 105 books, I'm really proud of that number. I'm going to try to be as brief as I can. So the first book I read was The Play by Elle Kennedy. This is the third book in the Briar You series. This was not a great way to start off the year. I gave this 2 stars. This felt like a really odd attempt of Elle Kennedy at diversity, and honestly, Hunter and Demi should have stayed friends. Next, I did a reread of City of Bones, the first book in the Mortal Instrument series. I'm aware that this isn't the best book ever. It has a lot of really questionable things, actually, especially towards the end. But I always give this book a 5 out of 5 stars, just for nostalgia's sake. And then I did another reread. I was doing a lot of rereads in the beginning of this year, but I reread Cinder by Marissa Meyer, the first book in the Lunar Chronicle series. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I never thought I'd be interested in reading about a teenage cyborg, but throw in a sassy android in a dystopian setting. Apparently I'm in. Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is my first TJR book that I ever read. I was really apprehensive to go into this one because I normally don't like books about musicians because I know that there's inevitably going to be really cringy song lyrics, but I actually didn't mind it in this one. In fact, I kind of really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. And then I read The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Yep. I gave into the hype, but I'm so glad that I did because this is still one of my favorite Trojan War retellings I've ever read. Not that I've read many, but it is my favorite. The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. Sure, it was cringy, it was corny, it was cheesy, and she's so small she can practically fit into Adam Driver's pocket. I get it, but I still had a good time reading this book. 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Dare by Elle Kennedy. This is the final book in the Briar You series. I didn't like this one either. I think in general I just didn't like the Briar You series as much as I like the Off Campus series. This one's a 2.5 stars. I feel like they also should have stayed friends. And then I read Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas. This was around the time when I was reading a lot of really popular book talk books. Yeah, this is one of the most absurd high school romances I've ever read, but low-key, the truck scene was kind of fun. And then I read The Awakening by Carolyn Peckham and Suzanne Valenti. This is the first book in the Zodiac Academy series. The writing was kind of rough, but I honestly couldn't look away from the drama. I gave that one 3 stars. And then I read Addicted to You by Krista and Mecca Ritchie. This is the first book in the Addicted Calloway series. This first book is still my favorite because this kind of redefined the entire romance genre for me, which I know sounds ridiculous and sounds so dramatic, but it did. And then I read Ruthless Fae, the second book in the Zodiac Academy series. I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. The writing really didn't get much better, but I started to really care about Tori Vega's drama. I didn't care about Darcy, and I still don't, to be honest with you, but Tori's drama. So after that, I read The Reckoning, which is the third book in the Zodiac Academy series, and I gave this one 4 stars. This was actually really freaking fun. There was a motorcycle scene in here that low-key, I feel like it's what Reich and Daisy from the Addicted Calloway series think they look like when they get on their motorcycles. I'm sorry, not the biggest fan of Razy, so if you're a Razy fan. And then I read Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson, and I gave this one 3.5 stars. It was so poetic, but honestly the combination of the purple prose and the second person POV made it really hard for me to truly connect with the characters. And then I read Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. This is my first Coho book, and it wasn't the best first impression. I gave this a 2. Well, I think I originally gave this 3 stars, but upon further reflection, it's now a 2.5 stars. I still don't understand how Miles managed to get over his years of trauma after one conversation with Rachel. Rachel, not a therapist, Rachel. And then I read The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. I give this one 4 stars. Erin Blackford is a definition of written by a woman, but I do wish that we got less workspace and more Spain. Like, the Spain part was so short. And then I picked up a random Kindle Unlimited book called The Exchange by Jillian Dodd. It's part of like a longer series. This is one of the most juvenile romances I've ever read. I don't even know why I finished it, but I probably would have really enjoyed this if I'd read this in like 5th grade. I gave this 2 stars. And then I read A Man Called Uvo, which is my favorite book book of the year. 5, 6, 7, 10 out of 5 stars. I think this actually might be my favorite book of all time. I read this in February and I still constantly think about it to this day. I read Scarlett by Marissa Meyer. This one's a reread. I didn't like this one as much the second time around, but I still really enjoyed it because this is the book where we met Captain Thorne. I gave this one a 4 stars. I read City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare, another reread. This is the second book in the Mortal Instruments series. I'm not as attached to the second book as I am the first book. And then I read From Lukov with Love by Mariana Zapata. I gave this one a 3 stars. The first 200 pages of this book honestly could have been cut down to like 5 pages. There was so much repetition for what? But the last 60% was at least really enjoyable. The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I gave this one a 4 stars. This is a very quiet psychological thriller with an open ending that I absolutely loved. City of Glass by Cassandra Clare, the third book in the Mortal Instruments series, another reread. Gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. I know, what a leap. If Cassandra Clare actually ended the Mortal Instruments in this book like she was originally planning on doing, I wouldn't have been mad because this would have been a really satisfying conclusion. But obviously I'm really glad she continued it because we got more Sebastian, who's probably one of my favorite villains ever. And then I read Ricochet. This is the second book in the Addicted Calloway series. I give this one a 4 stars. This one was really short and it was really mostly about the beginning of Lily's recovery, and I also really enjoyed getting to know the rest of the core 6, or at least meeting them. And then I read The Wrath into Dawn by Renee Audia and gave this one a 4 stars. For a book that was meant to be an enemies to lovers, it was kind of on the insta-lovey side, but for some reason I really enjoyed the dynamic between all of the characters. And then I read nonfiction The Molecule of More by Daniel Z. Lieberman. This was really just about dopamine. I give it a 5 out of 5 stars. It was actually really informative. The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I give this one a 2.5 stars. I think Lucy Foley did a really amazing job with the atmosphere of the book, but the mystery thriller part was full of cheap jump scares, extremely predictable twists, and characters so unlikable that I genuinely didn't care what the hell happened to them. And also it was really obvious. And then I read Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This is the first book in the Folk of the Air trilogy. This really felt like I was diving into a fairy tale, like the original version, not Disney's. And then I read The Wicked King, the second book in the Folk of the Air trilogy. I give this one a 5 out of 5 stars. Matic and Juice relationship is probably one of the most interesting father-daughter relationships I've ever read about in fantasy. And then I read The Queen of Nothing, the last book in the Folk of the Air trilogy. I also gave this one a 5 stars. There was something that happens towards the end of this book that was so camp, and I mean that in the best way possible. And then I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I think TJR did a really great job at capturing the essence of a morally gray woman who felt like she had to do these really horrible things to save herself or the people that she loved without necessarily regretting her decisions later on, but also acknowledging that she knew what she did was wrong. I give that one a 4.5 stars. And then I read Arsenic and Adobo by Mia P. Manansala. This is the first book in the Tita Rossi's Kitchen Mysteries, like a cozy mystery series. I do agree with a lot of the criticism with this book that I do wish there was a little bit more amateur sleuthing and less really detailed food descriptions, but I really enjoyed this book because it honestly made me feel really seen. This is the first book I've ever read with a Filipino-American main character. And then I picked up The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. I gave this one a 3.5 stars. Oddly enough, I thought that this one was lacking in atmosphere, but the mystery thriller part of it was significantly better than the other book. And then I picked up Homicide in Hollow Hollow. This is the second book in the Tita Rossi's Kitchen Mystery. I love that she actually listened to the people in this one. She cut down on the over-the-top food descriptions and added a lot more amateur sleuthing. 3.5 stars. And then I read Verity by Colleen Hoover. I was really pleasantly surprised by this one. I give this a 4 stars. I thought this was a really solid thriller, but I almost wish that it didn't have the romance because it didn't really add anything. And then I picked up another nonfiction book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. This is about a woman who's been obsessed with true crime her whole life, and she literally made true crime her career. She became a true crime author. This is basically Pippa Fitzimobi from A Good Girl's Guide to Murder in real life. I read Addicted for Now by Kristen Mecca-Ritchie. This is the third book in the Addicted Calloway series. I give it a 4 stars. Obviously, I had a really good time, except this one had more hints of Razy than the other 2 books. As I've said before, I'm not the biggest fan of Razy, so that part kind of gave me the ick. 12 Seconds in the Dark by John Mattingly. I don't rate memoirs or autobiographies, so this one doesn't have a rating since this is the memoir of the cop who shot Breonna Taylor. Honestly, I just read this because I was really curious to hear from his perspective, like what happened on his end, like what the hell went wrong. There was a lot of really interesting information and receipts, if you will. However, take this one with a grain of salt because this is coming from a very biased perspective. And then I read Normal People by Sally Rooney. I give this a 2.5 stars. This one is basically about an insufferable character called Marianne and a bland, boring, no personality character called Connell being in love with each other but also not knowing how to talk to each other. It was whatever. And then I read Bunny by Mona Awad. I gave this one a 4 stars. This book was weird as fuck, but I mean that in a good way. I almost feel like I need to reread this in order to have actual coherent thoughts about it. After that, I picked up Kiss the Sky by Chris and Becca Ritchie, the 4th book in the Addicted Calloway series, or the first book in the Calloway Sisters series. Yeah, I gave this one a 4.5 stars. This is basically a trash reality TV show about rich people in TV form. Only a Monster by Vanessa Len. This is a weird one. I ended up giving this a 4 stars. I honestly thought that this is going to be one of those books that I read, enjoy, and then forget about a week later. But for some reason, I still think about this book periodically, and I'm actually super excited for the sequel that's coming out in August of this year. And then In the Summer of Broken Rules by K.L. Walther. This is basically a Taylor Swift's Lover album novelized. I gave that one a 4 stars. And then I read Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. I didn't have high hopes for this one, but I gave it a 3.5 stars. I was very pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed this, especially considering the subject matter. And then I read Heartbones by Colleen Hoover. This was another really pleasant surprise. I think I really enjoyed this one because she didn't try too hard to make some sort of impactful statement with this. I mean, she did try a little, not as much as she did in her other books that I've read. And then I read The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson. This is the first book in the Remnant Chronicle series. I gave this one a 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was about a princess who runs away on the day of her arranged wedding with a dude that she's never met. That prince that she was supposed to marry goes after her, and an assassin was also sent after her, but like you don't know who's who. And then I read Heartstoppers volumes 1 through 4. I gave volume 1 and 2 4 stars, and 3 and 4 4.5 stars. The first 2 books were really cute. It still was tackling some really tough topics without making it too heavy, and the last 2 books just delved a little bit deeper into these issues. And then I read The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. This is the first book in the Percy Jackson series. This is another reread for me. I gave it a 3.5 stars. As somebody with ADHD, I will forever be grateful for this series. This made me feel so seen as a kid. A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime by Monica Murphy. This one's kind of an unpopular opinion, but I gave this one a 1 star. It was way too long, and Crew was so creepy in how he was infantilizing Ren. The way that he talked about her made it sound like he was sexually attracted to a toddler. It was gross. The Cartographers by Peng Shepherd. I gave this one a 2 stars. This is one of the most disappointing reads of the year for me. The concept with the maps and the hidden towns, hidden passages, hidden doors. It sounded so cool, but the execution was so blah. Like, it wasn't even mid, it was blah. The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I give this one a 3 stars. This book started off like your basic domestic thriller with an alcoholic peeping Tom, woman in the window type of narrator, until Riley Sager decided that he was gonna take us to Funky Town with that weird ass plot twist. I laughed out loud when I read it. Like, I couldn't believe what I was reading because it felt like Riley Sager completely forgot about the concept of foreshadowing. The Terminal List by Jack Carr. This one's kind of out of pocket. I just picked this up because I really wanted to watch the Amazon Prime series that came out with Chris Pratt, and obviously I wanted to read the books first. Really surprised at how much I liked it, and also how much heart this one had for such a violent book. Although I will say this book is very graphic and it's also very politically opinionated, so definitely not for everybody. But I give it a 4.5 stars. We're number 55. Oh my god. I can't believe we have 50 more. I feel like I've been talking forever. It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. I give this one a 4 stars because all of a sudden, King Crab Fisherman are my type. Hot House Flower by Chris and Becca Ritchie, the second book in the Calloway Sisters series. This is the first Razy book, so this is told from both Reich and Daisy's perspective. My least favorite couple. The only reason why I enjoyed it is because we still get a glimpse of the other 2 couples, and honestly it was kind of annoying how Reich was like, it's not about sex, it's not about sex, but then the second that they officially got together and officially became a couple, 90% of their interactions when they were alone together was just them having sex. They barely had actual conversations when it was just the 2 of them. Like, all of the conversations happened about their relationship with other people, at least most of it, after they got together. I give this one a 3.5 stars. Cruel Prince by Jade. I think this is part of some series. I don't really remember much about this book except that it had really cringy dialogue, the type of dialogue where it sounds like a middle-aged person mocking teenagers. Hook, Line, and Sinker by Tessa Bailey. I gave this one a 3.5 stars. It didn't have the same magic that the first book had, but I still really liked Hannah and Fox's dynamic. Thrive by Krista and Becca Ritchie, the 4th book in the Addicted series. I gave this one a 4 stars. It was basically just a recap of what happened in Hot House Flower and Kiss the Sky, but from Lily and Lo's perspective. And obviously, I still really enjoyed it because Lilo supremacy. Funny You Should Ask by Alyssa Sussman. I gave this one a 2 stars. It was so boring, but at least it had a cute cover, I guess. Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. This one is a memoir, so there's no rating. If you had like a wild party girl phase, or if you're in that phase right now, you're probably gonna find this relatable. Final Girls by Riley Sager. I gave this one a 4 stars. Even though I saw that plot twist coming from like the very beginning of the book, I still really enjoyed the slasher elements and the process of getting to the reveal of what happened. Things I Wanted to Say But Never Did by Monica Murphy. This one is set in the same world as the Million Kisses in Your Lifetime book, and I also gave this one a 1 star. I remember this one also being way too long, but I think Monica Murphy's writing is just not for me. I don't really remember much about this book except that it was so torturous to get through. Like, I don't even know why I finished all 600 pages of it. Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. Was it very similar to The Love Hypothesis? Yes. Is Levi basically just another Adam Driver? Yes. Did I still love it? Yeah, I gave it 4 stars. The Heart of Betrayal by Mary E. Pearson. This is the 2nd book in the Ren Chronicles series. I didn't expect a series to actually have interesting worlds building in politics. Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This one is definitely the most relatable one that I've read from her. And then I read Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. I know, this was around the time when everybody was freaking out about this book, either absolutely hating it or absolutely loving it. And I'm one of the people that really loved it. Like, yes, Magnolia and BJ, probably one of the most toxic relationships I've ever read about, but the drama was so entertaining. And I also really enjoyed the writing in this one. I know that's another problem for a lot of people, but I really loved it. Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. I gave this one a 4 star. It was very short and kind of weird, but it was perfect for the story that it told. Blindsided by Candy Steiner. This is part of a football romance series. I think it's actually the 2nd book. I didn't read the first one, but this is like a fake dating situation. It honestly reminded me a lot of The Deal by Elle Kennedy, except make it football and make it very meta by adding a ton of romance book references. I gave that one a 3.5 stars. Love in the Time of Serial Killers by, I don't know who wrote this. I gave this one a 2 stars. I wish that the love interest would have been an actual serial killer and would have made this book a lot more interesting. Really cute cover though. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. This one's a reread. One of my favorite children's classics that will always feel like a really fun acid trip. Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. I gave this a 4.5 stars. This is one of my favorite thrillers that I read this year. I really enjoyed that this was told over 24 hours, and this had this one plot twist that when I read it I was like, oh my god, that's how you do that plot twist. If you've read this book and the other book that I'm thinking of, you know exactly what I'm talking about. True Believer by Jack Carr. This is the 2nd book in that Terminalist political thriller series that I was reading. I gave this one a 2 stars. Unfortunately, this one wasn't as good as the first one. I loved the first one. This one lacked the heart that I loved in the first book, and it just took way too long for the plot to actually get going. Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. This is another reread, the 1st book in the Infernal Devices series. I give this one a 3.5 stars because honestly, did Will really have to do that? I don't think so. I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This is another memoir, so there's no rating, but I can confidently say that this is one of the best memoirs I have ever read. Misfit by Elle Kennedy. This is part of her new series. I gave this one a 2 stars. I didn't like the way it was structured. It had multiple POVs, which I normally love multiple POVs. But other than the main couple, the other POVs were telling a story that had nothing to do with the main story. Like, it didn't even really connect. And it was so obvious that she only put in these other POVs to set it up for the other books. But it made it feel so disjointed. And then I finally read It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I know, I was so late to the game. And also because this was around the time when the 2nd book was coming out. I give this one a 3 stars. It was just mid, honestly. Oh yeah, this book. I read Babel by R.F. Kuang. I gave it a 4 stars. I really liked her writing, and this was obviously very well researched. However, this is probably my most disappointing book of the year. Hear me out. Only because I was expecting this book to completely reframe the way that I saw the whole fucking world, and it didn't. But instead I got mediocre fantasy and very basic social commentary that we learned in middle school social studies. And then I read Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Veen. I gave this one a 4 stars. Honestly, for a domestic thriller, this one was actually really fun. The XX by Erin Sterling. Take Halloween Town with Hocus Pocus and The Good Witch. And that's what this is. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. Yes, it was silly, it was goofy, but it was so witchy. It just gave the perfect Halloween witchy vibes. I don't know why I love this book so much. I can't really explain it. Leave the World Behind by Rumaan Alam. I gave this one a 3 stars. This book was weirdly sexual, and I don't mean smut. I mean, it described the most mundane things in the most sexual way possible. It was also too descriptive. As somebody who loves descriptions, this just went overboard. Like, the author literally listed out the grocery list of one of the characters at one point. The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I give this one a 5 out of 5 stars. This book is everything that I want in a horror. It's creepy, it's subtle, but so unsettling that it crawls under your skin. And I love how much personality the house actually had. Like, it felt like a real character. Long Live the Pumpkin Queen by Shay Earnshaw. This is a retelling, obviously. Not a retelling. This is like a continuation of The Night Before Christmas. I gave it a 3 stars. I think she did a really good job of capturing the essence and the magic of Nightmare Before Christmas, but the story itself felt too young. This was meant to be young adult, but it felt like a very, very young middle grade. Like, stuff that like maybe 8-year-olds would enjoy. Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. I give this one a 2 stars. This was like one of the most obvious thrillers I've ever read. Like, where was the thrill? Where was the suspense? Where was the mystery? The Residence by Andrew Piper. Imagine if Paranormal Activity was set in the 1800s at the White House. 2 stars. City of Fallen Angels by Cassandra Clare. This is the 4th book in the Mortal Instruments series. Another reread, of course. This one's definitely my least favorite in this series. This definitely felt like not a filler, but it was setting things up again after the events of the last book. This one was kind of slow. And also Jace didn't feel like Jace in this one. Violet Made of Thorns by Gina Chen. I give this one a 3.5 stars. I don't think this author's definition of morally gray aligns with my definition of morally gray, but it was still really fun to read, and it was definitely very inspired by Disney's fairy tales. Multiple Disney fairy tales. Uzumaki by Junji Ito. This is my first horror manga, and I really loved it. I gave this one a 4 stars. Junji Ito's imagination is on a completely different dimension. This was so creepy and unsettling, and I was literally cringing away from the pages because some of the illustrations were so good. It was so creepy. Especially the man in the barrel. Oh my god. When I first saw that and I realized what I was looking at, I got chills. The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. It gives it a 4 stars. This is one of those middle grades, not just for young audience. This can definitely be enjoyed by all ages. How to Kill Your Family by Bella Mackey. Imagine if the poster girl for Pick Me Girls were to become a serial killer. And that's who the main character of this book is. Kingdom of the Wicked by Cara Maniscalco. I gave this a 3 stars. In theory, I should have loved everything about this book, but for some reason, there was something about the execution and the writing that was just okay. Ninth House by Lee Bardugo. I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. I'm trash for Darlington. I can't wait for Hellbent, which is coming out so freaking soon. And then I read the entire A Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy. I gave the first book, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, 4.5 stars. And then I gave the second book, Good Girl Bad Blood, 4.5 stars. And the final book, As Good as Dead, 4 stars. This is a really solid YA thriller. I do think that the ending got a bit overwrought, but overall it was still a really fun time. Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. I gave this one a 2.5 stars. Sally Rooney really has a thing for emails. I don't really know what else to say about this book. It was so pointless. Under One Roof by Ali Hazelwood. This is one of her like novellas. Yeah, this one is 2.5 stars because apparently he's the size of a couch. Anyway, Empire of the Vampire by I was gonna say Ali Hazelwood. Imagine if Ali Hazelwood wrote Empire of the Vampire. Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars because I mentioned it in the past. I think in my last video, I am a hoe for vampires. This was so good. This book just confirms that I'm always gonna be trash for vampire stories. Oh my god, we're at number 99. Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. Figure skater, hockey player, romance that everybody was obsessed with. And I really liked it. I ended up giving this a 4 stars. This is like a dream come true for 10-year-old me who was obsessed with Ice Princess. Legend Born by Tracy Dion. I give this one a 3 stars. Solid concept and the characters are really great. But there's so much info dumping. I was so bored for most of the book. It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. This is the sequel to It Ends With Us. I gave it a 3 stars. I thought it was mid. It was fine. The Pearl by John Steinbeck. I gave it a 4 stars. John Steinbeck has this wonderful ability to write descriptions in a very concise way, but still paint such a vivid picture that you feel like you're there. Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. This is the second book in the Infernal Devices trilogy. I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. This is a reread as well. Every single time I reread this book, it just reaffirms that the love triangle in the Infernal Devices is the best love triangle that I have ever read, because we all know how difficult love triangles are to write. Oh my god, two more. A Thursday Murder Club. A Thursday? What? The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. I give this one a 4 stars. If you enjoy British humor and senior citizens, I think you're really gonna love this one. And then the final book that I read. The final book that I read this year was A Merry Little Meet Cute by Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone. I gave this one a 1 star. What a great way to bookend the year, with a 1 star at the end and a 2 star in the beginning. But yeah, this wasn't great. I regret picking this book up. I didn't care about anything or anyone in this book. Oh my god. Wow. That is it. We got through all 105 books that I read this year. I feel like I've been talking forever. My throat is kind of dry. But let me know if you read any of these books, if you agree or disagree with any of my assessments. I would love to have a discussion with you guys in the comments down below. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you guys on the next one.